Okay, hi folks. I hope that this is going to work out okay. I'm so sorry. Every time I say I'm going to do a video in a certain amount of time, I never do. So I'll just have to just say I'm not going to promise that anymore and just do my videos when I do my videos. But I hope you're having, this is Thanksgiving Day here in North Texas, and wherever you're watching, I hope that you're having a great day. And I'm doing this little video. It's fairly short, and I will get more organized here very shortly in order to do more videos that are a little bit more in depth. But I did want to at least get this out so that I'd have something out there. I feel like I've just been so busy with so many other things that I haven't had time to tend to this, and it's made me increasingly anxious. So I'm hoping that today will be fun for you. What I want to show you is I'm making some little tags for Christmas, and like most people, I think I go to different sources and look in magazines and look in different books and try to come up with little characters that that I like, but that will be something that I've created and not necessarily just copied from somebody else. So this, and I will say this, it's perfectly okay to use sources of people that you really like and be able to trace and use their little design for things that you're using just for yourself, things that you're not going to be trying to sell to others or that sort of thing. So this is actually there is a design very, very, very similar to this that I found on Pinterest, but I could find no information on who the actual artist was. The person who posted it, it was not the artist. So that happens a lot on Pinterest. Some people manage to capture the name of the artist inside their capture of whatever photo they're sharing, but sometimes they don't. This does not look exactly like that anyway, because I ended up deciding I just didn't like certain things about the one that I saw. And Santa's Santa. You got a little fat guy wearing a red suit with black pants and a red shirt and a gold buckle, and you're going to end up looking like a lot of people anyway, whether you meant to or not. So I just want to encourage you to use them as a board to spring you in your imagination out, but try not to just copy things out. But especially when you're first starting, it's really totally okay to do that, as long as you don't then turn around and try to sell them, as long as you're using them for practice and for learning, that sort of thing. And even when you do, if you do end up making something and you go, gosh, it doesn't look like that person, but I know I really got that idea from them, then credit them. Say, I was practicing and learning, and I was influenced by this artist and that artist, and that gives them credit as well too. So all that said, I don't want you to get all hung up on that, because when you're first starting especially, it can be really scary, and you think, oh my gosh, I'm going to cause some kind of legal kerfuffle, and you're not. So so this is one that I did, and I want to make several of these that I'm going to actually be giving to friends, and it's on watercolor paper, and I wanted it to be sturdy and something that maybe they could reuse if they want to. This one I'm going to put to and from on it, but I'm not going to write who it's to or who it's from, other than on the package itself. And that way, if they want to reuse this to give to somebody else, they can fill that in if they want to, and they don't have to worry about they can just do that. So This one is a little gnome, and gnomes are much like Santa. They're like an egg with a beard, a nose, hands, and feet, and not always feet, sometimes just toes, and then some kind of dorky hat. And they're just charming and sweet. And you can make them cranky by making them have cheeks or whatever, or you can, they're super, super simple, and they're always cheerful. And so I think that you can see that I first did this in pencil, and now I've gone back over it and done it with ink. And I'm going to use this one to go through a process with you, but I am also going to paint it with you. So I'm taking a moment here, I hope I'm not shaking the camera too much, to erase my pencil. And if you're doing this on, if you're doing this on very good watercolor paper, when you do the erasing, sorry about that, I don't know how to fix this table so I can't shake it when I'm doing things like this. But you can do these sorts of things on this paper, and it's very sturdy. So then you can erase your pencil marks and be ready to paint. And this one, I intentionally was sloppy with my from and to, because I just wanted it to look that way. So, but I did use a pencil to first get it out, because about half the time, I'm in a rush and I spell from FRM or something. So, so it's better for me to put it with a pencil and get it all written out. And then I'm first going to paint this and talk to you a little bit, and then I'm going to show you different things that you will need and use to do things like this. Ways to do it with whatever you've got on hand, and then what you can also use. As you're going along in your journey, you're going to find that you're not going to be using as much tracing paper as perhaps you did when you first started out, or if you've got a very complicated project, you're going to use tracing paper and perhaps some charcoal paper or Choco paper, or, any kind of tracing, so that you can put some marks down. So it just varies, and I'll show you a little trick about some of that. So here we are. This is my little pad, and I'll find what the name of this is, but you see them all the time in Hobby Lobby and maybe in Michael's, although Michael's doesn't have much in terms of art supply anymore. But these are not what I would call real watercolor, because these are little pans. These little pans will come out. That's what they're called, is pans. And they're sort of a watercolor. Well, I've got them stuck down to the bottom. They're sort of watercolor, and some of them are watercolor, but many of them are sort of dyes. And they'll act like watercolor, but you'll get colors that you really can't get in most true watercolors. And that's okay. We're not doing Rembrandt here. We're doing little cards. So these are perfectly fine, and they're great to use to get you used to using a variety of colors and the way that you wet down watercolors. Although I will say that these take much longer to get wet than regular watercolors. I suspect they're watercolor with a lot of binder, and then other oxides are mixed in to give you some colors that you really don't often find in natural watercolors, so to speak. But anyway, these are perfectly okay. And some of them can be very expensive, and some of them are like $12. So when you're starting out, you're going to get just fine for things like this for $12. That's not going to be a problem. But as you move along, you'll find that you, like I have a full pan of watercolors that have watercolors that they will just last forever. And I use that when I'm painting bigger pictures. But for things like this makes me just as happy as, as a dog on a bone. So I'm not at the least bit unhappy with these. And in some ways, they can be more fun because they kind of get you out of the worrying so much about shades and all that kind of stuff. Anywho, I am not going to paint the background of this little character in this demonstration. You can do that, and the thing about watercolor is, and these as well, because they're watercolor enough to do this, if I were to dip my watercolor brush in water and paint around this little fellow, I could then use these as a wash, and I'll give you an example of that. I could use these as a wash, and I wouldn't necessarily invade his territory. So, and I'll just show you an example. This is your basic gnome, and he's got his little feet, and let's give him a little hand. Just like the other little guy. And some people just put their hands in front of them, but I'm just going to do this so that you can see, so that you can see that you can go around this guy. Okay, and so now his little beard is going to be like this, and his little hat's going to come down over his eyes, and we'll go outside the edge there, and we'll make it go up like this. Okay. Let's do a little ball on the end, like a Santa elf or some gnome or whatever he is. Okay, so all that said, this is just for fun to show you. Now you could draw his pants in if you want to in a color. So here we go. What I want to show you here is your water is not going to go inside him if you don't go inside him with your brush. Okay, now if you've got something underneath him, I mean, like this, if I got water down here, it could impact that because it could go around the edges and seep up. So I hope you can see this, but I'm taking my water and I'm staying out of the picture. I'm not going to go a whole bunch of detail with this, but I'm staying out. I'm not touching the line. You can get really close, but I'm just not, I'm not pushing the boundaries too much here because this is just an example to show you. Okay, so now if I take, let's say I want to take this blue here, and I'm just going to mix, see how weird that blue is. I like it, but it's an odd shade. Okay, we're going to just get that nice and damp and wet. Now I'm just going to tab it on. But see, it's not going to go into the arms because they're dry. And the dryness acts as a barrier, which is really great if you want to do a background to your little gnome or whatever else you're painting. So you don't have to worry about getting too close to the edge, as long as you don't tip your paper around. And like I said, as long as you don't have something, you know, I would normally put this on something so that it's up away from the table edge. Now, I didn't go down in there with my water, so I have to be a little more careful there. But again, it's going to go where the water goes, okay? So that you can do on this, as you can take water and go all over. You could leave a square that is not painted right here so that you could write in your name without writing over watercolor. So you could, you know, you can really play with that water and do things with it. If I wanted, for example, to leave a little white on his nose when I'm ready to paint, or even on his little gloves, I could leave that spot clean of water, and it would stay white when I paint his little nose. So it's really kind of nifty to, once you understand that, to be able to paint your background, not worry about it getting in on anything. And if it does, like there's a little, I overlapped obviously a little bit there, it's going to cover up just fine. So that's just one of the little things about watercolor that's pretty fun. Let me get that out of the way. And now that this guy is dry, I could go back in once he's fully dry. If he were damp, I couldn't. But I could take water now and go around the edges and do the same thing. Add a background now, even though I've already got my little character done. And so that's kind of fun. So what I want to show you here, though, is that with your watercolor, you can draw with your, you can use, this is a brush that has a point that comes to a point pretty easily. And it's, this is a size 3, but I have others. You can use great big ones. This is a size 10 round. You can use flats if you have flats. They're not as useful sometimes for small pictures. But they're, you know, this is a 3/8" wash, which that's good. It's just a little big for what we're doing here, because I'm going to do little detail. So I'm just going to play just for a little bit. I want to show you how you can paint. You're going to leave his beard white for now. We're going to paint around the edge, and then we're going to paint the little hat. But you can see that this is a super, super simple little character. So I'm going to put him in a green outfit because it's for Christmas. So I'm just going to put this in here. And I can mix these. I could mix them with yellow and, or with blue and get, you know, different shades if I wanted to of unique colors, or to match something in particular if I were looking for that. But I don't need to with this one. It's this little bright green is just fine. Now I'm taking most of it off. You can see I've got a little paper towel here. I'm taking most of it off because I don't want this to be, and I'm hoping that I've got that in there so you can see it. I'll probably get this done and find out that I have this completely fuzzed out because I didn't do it right. But I'm just doing it. This is like coloring as a kid. You know, you're not doing anything super fancy. You're just laying down your first layer. So he's like in a little, you know, flannel leotard thing, like he's going to bed or something. Okay. So this is super simple. Quick, quick, quick. I'm gonna make his little arms like he's got on his long johns. Okay, and I want to let that dry, because if I were to get this wet and it touched that wet, it would begin to meld together, which is fine when you want it to, but we don't want it to right now. But what I do want to do is, while this is still wet on his feet, with watercolor, if you add more watercolor, you get a darker color than your first wash is. And if you have that nicely washed and you want to add a little bit of darkness to it, you can add a blue very easily, not that light blue, but this little color. Add just a smidge of that while it's wet, and it's going to mush around for you and create this little shadow. So watercolor flow is really something that is a big part of learning to do with watercolor. I'm going to make him darker on this side. I'm going to pretend that the light's coming from the other side. Again, I'm not worried about his beard too much. I'm going to put a little bit of color in his beard in a minute, but I want this to show a little darkness. And I might want it to even be just a tad darker, like right up in here. You can use black, but I find that sometimes black is just too much. You'll see what I mean. It's just too much. And it takes away the vibrancy, but it's all right. It's all right. Just to show you, this is not, like I say, this is not high art. This is just a Christmas tag. Okay, but I'm going to go back here. Make it just a little brighter. Okay, now, if I want to take away some of this, I take off my water, and I'm just going to go along the edge. And that's going to make this look a little brighter along this side. It's still going to be green, but it's going to be a little bit brighter. I could do the same thing right here on this part of his foot, because there might be a little light coming in there. So I could make that a little bit brighter and then leave this a little bit darker. This should now be probably close enough for me to be able to put on the gloves, but I'm going to wait just a second, and I'm going to move up to the hat. And I think that hat is just crying out to be red. It's just too, and this is kind of one of those phony reds because of this kind of paint. So I'm going to, it's kind of a pinkish red. And I'm going to choose that because it's easy to make shadows because it's so light. Okay, so now I'm just going to go, I'm going to leave this one white right now, and I'm going to leave the top part of this, whoop, a little too much, suck it back up. I'm going to leave a little bit right there on the top white, if you can see that. And then as I go down, I'm going to leave a little bit of the middle white because the light will be coming down on it. Then when I get down here, I'm just going to fill it in because by now the light is not going to get on it quite as much. And as I go down, I can get darker. You don't have to do all this kind of worry detail, you know, but it's just something that adds a little extra interest to it if you do. And it's a way to get you used to doing that kind of control. These little guys are just fun. Now there might be some light shining down here, so I'm going to leave those a little bit. Again, the curve's going back that way. So I'm just going to let the white paper do the work for me and leave just a little smidge of bright white. And then right down here, I'm going to really go dark, except for that one little corner, okay? Now, because this other is a bit drier now, I can go back in and I can make some of these a bit darker. Again, I could take a little bit of the blue if I wanted and make it purple, but I'm going to take a little bit of the red and make it my accent color. So over here where I know it's nice and dark, I'm just going to dab that red in. And again, this isn't like big sharp changes. It's just enough to make it look like you've spent, and you have spent a little more time. And it just makes the eye go, oh, okay, that's a little better. That's a little more realistic than what, you know, I can tell that someone painted this. Again, I'm going to go just in a few little spots, adding that red. Okay, I'm not going to go, going to take that off. It's okay if it goes out a little bit. Okay, so now I'm going to leave that. But now the little hands, I'm going to do them in just flat out red. Especially on this side, because there's not going to be much light over on this side of him. Okay, Here, there's going to be some light up here and here. So I'm going to do red here. And here. And then I'm going to take a little bit of this pink and I'm just going to put it right there. Just enough so that now he's got a little bit of white up there. And then we'd pretty much let that dry for a little bit. What I want to do is I want to ground him a little bit because otherwise he's kind of floating up in the air. And this has a brown. It's kind of a golden brown. And I'm going to take a little bit of darker brown. Sometimes the golden brown is just a little bit of an odd color for my taste. Okay. So I'm going to go here, and I'm just shaking my brush. I'm not really brush stroking so much as just shaking my brush. And this is just to get him grounded a little bit. And then I'm going to take a little bit of this blue, just a little bit. And I'm going to go right in here to make it, because that's going to be a dark spot. In fact, I'm not happy that that's quite so light. Okay. Now, if you had salt or something like that and you wanted to get all fancy with this, you could add a little bit of salt right there and it would make it look like it was pebbly, you know, so you could do that. Or you could even take a dry brush and tap it. Later, you could add white, and we might do that. Okay, so now what I want to do is I want to put a little bit of contrast in this beard so that it looks fluffy. And the way I'm going to do that is by taking just the tiniest little bit of this. It's a sort of it's a brownish yellow. Almost, it's probably their version of raw sienna, maybe. I've long ago lost my colors. You don't want to do too much of this. It's just enough to delineate that he's got some, I don't know if you can see that even. It's just to delineate that there is some shade and shadow on his little beard. And once you get that first one down, you can add a little more in a couple of places where it might be the most dark. It should be down in here. You don't really want to do much more than that. On the back side of these, because the sun might be shining on this, but it would be curved under and it would be lighter on this side, so just kind of do that. Make it just a little bit. And I think that's really enough. Okay. With watercolor, one of the things that happens to people, and it happens with acrylics too, but with watercolor in particular, because it's going to dry, it's going to look different in a bit compared to what it looks like right now. And you have to take that into account and just step back. And so every once in a while, just stop, because you can always add more, but it gets harder to take stuff away with watercolor paper. But just stop, let it dry up a little bit. And then if you see, like, for example, I'm not particularly happy with how red that is. I want it to be more red. So I'm going to go over here and take a little bit more of this now that this is dried a little bit. And I'm going to just go right there, right along the edge there. Just a little. So that's going to make that white area pop a little more, but not get rid of all the pinkness. And I could do the same thing in a couple of places up here, for example. This is, I think this is still going to be pretty light, but it might be pretty dark once we're in here, and especially right there in that curve. So this could be pretty dark, and then this side would be dark, and this extra little bunch of watercolor is going to make it look darker without adding blacks or anything like that. Okay. And we can do the same thing with the feet. Let's say that we really like those feet, but they're still just, they're just a little bit too light. So I've just took my green and my blue again. I'm going to let it stay kind of light on the top, right there where the sun might come down, but I'm going to ground him a little bit more because he's going to be in shadow right there. And then I could do the same where his little beard might be making it look darker. We might not know that it's going to look darker. We don't think about that when we're looking at people or things like that. We don't think about that it would be a little bit darker, but it can be. And that just gives him more roundness. That's a little much. Right there. I don't want to take too much. Okay. So now we're just about done with that. And we're going to let that dry for just a second. And I'm going to make a little bit of what would be a peachy tone. So they have white, which you don't often use really in most watercolor. For one thing, it doesn't show up on white paper worth a darn. But in a situation like this, I can use it to lighten a color. So I want to use that white, and I want to use a little bit of orange. That's too bright, so I'm going to take a little bit of red, because I want him to have a little bit of a red nose, but not, you know, like he's 100% drunk or something. And I want it to be different from my hat. So again, I'm not going to completely cover his nose. I'm going to leave it with a little bit of highlight just so it stays white there. And I kind of want a little bit more of the red, I think. Not that much, but just a little. So it looks like maybe he's been in his schnapps or something, you know. Okay, now I think he's pretty done. Now, because I'm talking to you and not working at the same speed, this took a little bit longer, but you can see that once you've got this done, it's actually pretty fast. And so you would be able to get this little character done pretty quick. So I hope that encourages you to try making some of these little guys, just little elving guys, you could do all sorts of things. Just same kind of thing. You can do little elf girls. You could do with little dresses. You could do, you know, sky's the limit. You could do simple bows. You could do just, you know, think of every little Christmas symbol you've ever seen, and you could do something like that. And so I think this one, we see this so much, I'm not sure. This paper has a rough side and a slightly less rough side, and I'm going to use the much rougher side for this. There's they're all over the place right now. I mean, this time of year, you see a mazillion of these kinds of pictures. Okay, so I'm gonna put my little circle. I'm going to put it off center. I'm going to put my trace around this with a pencil. This is just some washi tape. Okay, And I'm going to lightly erase that because I don't need to see all that to do what I'm going to do. And a little bit of it won't matter because once the color's on it, it'll kind of fade into being like a background edge. So you just don't want it to be too dark. There is a tradition with watercolor that you can leave your pencil marks, you know, so that's kind of fun. And then I wouldn't normally even trace this out, but I'm going to, I would normally just color this in, but I'm going to do this. I'm going to put the little ball, and it has a little holder. And then I'm going to put a little branch, and I'm not going to make this fancy. I'm just going to do a little branch, and I'm going to tie this in with this little branch. Okay, so this is just going to be tied. You're not going to see the top of this. I'm not going to make a ribbon that you see. I'm going to fill this all in. Okay. And so this is just gonna go back through this thing to hold it. Okay, so that's how it's gonna be. All right, so now we're gonna use what we did before. We're going to paint water where we want the water to be, and I'm going to use this bigger brush. Okay, and I'm going to stay within that circle. I don't really care that it's got water that's got a little bit of a yellow tone to it, because in this particular case, that will actually make it just look a little bit like it's got a glow. Not much, you probably wouldn't notice it, but it won't hurt it. Okay. Now, I'm going to hold this up so that I can see that I've got water where I want it. Yep, like you can see that it's moist. Okay, so now I'm just going to take back this brush that I was using before, because I want it to get some swirls and things like that. And I'm going to actually make this into a green ball. So I'm just going to put some water, and I'm not going to brush stroke it all out. I'm going to let it run around a little bit, because that's the way it would be. The light makes it do different things. I don't want it light enough up, real light up at the top. I want it more light in the middle where there might be light on it. Okay. You can leave little white spots like that. That's perfect to just make it look like it has a shine. Okay, so we're going to just let that be. In the meantime, while that's drying, I'm going to take a dark brown. These are just a couple of shades of brown. There's not going to be a lot of difference because it's such a tiny line. But I am also going to take some of the black. I don't want to just use straight up black because it's too much, but I wouldn't mind having a little bit. So while that's drying, I'm just gonna, I can see I've got water on the ferrule. If you get water on the ferrule, it's gonna let gravity take a chance on it and run it down your thing. So you don't want to leave water on the ferrule or you'll get in a problem. Now you see, I'm just shaking because there's bark on these limbs. And so I want to simulate that there's unevenness. You could even have a little thing like that going off. But I don't want it to be too, exact. Now, I'm going to take this, and I'm going to make a different kind of green from what I did there, because that ball is done. But I want to make it kind of a bluish green to look more like Christmas needles. So this is actually going to make it much darker, which is fine. Okay, now I like to do this, so I just make sure I'm somewhere near the color I want. Okay, so now I'm going to start down here. I'm just going to, you could use a much smaller brush. You could use a pen, a colored pen if you wanted to. Today, the Chiefs play against the Cowboys, and so I'm a Chiefs fan, but then I'm also a Texan, so, you know, you got to be for the Cowboys. So it's going to be a tough thing to decide who I'm going to be cheering for, but it should be a fun game anyway, no matter what. Okay, I'm going to put a little bit of extra color on some of these. And like I say, this is almost too thick a brush for this. Okay. But you get the idea. Okay. And once that calms down, gets dried a little bit, we can go back in and add more, or we can add a slightly different color, like we might want to add perhaps some of this blue black directly in some spots, very, very low down where the shadows might be. I don't want to overdo this. And again, this is not, obviously, this is not a Michelangelo piece. It's just a sweet little tag I want to give to some friends. And you could do leaves instead of these little pine needles. You know, you could do that. Later, I'm going to come back in with just a couple of dollops of red for some berry. Okay, so now this is pretty good, and I think that my color is strong enough that, I mean dry enough, that I think I can put on the edge. We'll see. Many a thing has been ruined thinking that. But I'm going to dry my brush off quite a bit and just kind of have the tip so I can start at the top, and then if it turns out it's not quite dry enough, I won't have done too much damage. And I'm not at all worried about my pencil lines, so it's not. You can let it go a little, because then it'll look like it's reflected in there, but I just don't want big globs to come down. That's okay. That'll look a bit like it's reflective. Okay, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to take just a little bit of this red, just a tiny little bit of this red, and make that my carrier right there. And I'll show you how I'll deal with this in a second. But I'm also going to take a little bit of this violet. Oh, that's blue. Hard to tell. There we go. I'm going to take a little bit of that violet and put it on the inside and right there, just to brighten that up a little bit. Okay, and now I'm going to take my red and I'm going to make just these tiniest little red berries. Tiny, 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 tiny. Just a couple. I'm going to put them right, I mean really tiny. Right there. Right there. There at the base. I'm going to put, I think I'll put some right here. And you have to leave a little space, otherwise you just get a little blob. So you just want to leave a little space. Okay, and I think I don't want to just have two, so I'm going to have three. Odd numbers are always better than even numbers in your artwork. Okay, and so now you can mess, you can clean, you can do all kinds of stuff. What I will do is, once this is dry, I'm going to take one of these micron pens. Okay, and I'm just going to go ahead and say, I can't do lettering worth a darn. But I think that will be fine. Merry Christmas. And what I'll do, and in fact I could probably do it like this. I'm going to highlight this and make this darker. Okay. I'm going to go around the edge here because this is a bumpy edge, because it's got little spikes. If you've ever looked at your Christmas ornaments, it's got little pokey things. Okay, and I'm just gonna dot down where there might be some striation from the metal or the plastic. Okay, I can also cut this off, but only on one side. I'm not going to cut it off all the way over. Okay. Alrighty. And like I say, you can fuss with the edges as much as you want to make it look perfect. I'm not worried about it. If anybody's looking that close, then God help them. They need to be looking at something else. Okay, now if that kind of thing like that, right there where that little line is visible, would bother you, you would want to erase that before now. You can't erase it once we've gotten to this point. But again, I try not to. I want to fuss over the big things and the bigger pictures and the things that are it's just it will disturb people more looking at it if it's not right than if it is right. So I want to do that rather than what's happening here. Now I realize those little baubles right there might bother someone, so I could take this green, wipe it off, and make sure my ferrule is wiped off. And I can smudge this. You see what it's doing? The water is reactivating, and I can smudge out those pieces. But again, I would just encourage you not to take this too far. Not to worry about it too much. Okay? because it's not, for one thing, it's not worth your time. But for another, nobody else is going to worry about it. And if they do, well, they've got other issues. Okay. Alrighty. So there's that. So now I want to talk to you very quickly about tracing papers and that sort of thing, because those can be a real time saver. They can be very helpful, especially for complicated pictures. And they can also help you reproduce something that you like a lot. So this is one, for example. This is white Choco paper, and this was this was a little creature on a fern. Well, that would have been way too much trouble for me to stitch out, line out, and then not be able to reuse that again. This was a picture I used on a business card for some years, and it was supposed to be me back when I had long hair with a paintbrush stuck in my hair, and there were drops of paint and all that would be on there. But I wanted to be able to reproduce that, to change it up at different times, to play with it. So I made a drawing, then I traced the drawing so that I could redo that again quickly without having to worry about it. And there's almost no use for this, to be honest, this white paper. I have pieces of white transfer paper that I've had literally for decades. What I find I use way more are grays. And I think this one looks like it might be white too. This is Choco paper itself. Let's see. And it may be white too. And Choco paper works much better in white than regular tracing paper. I think you can probably see very quickly the difference between this really cheap tracing paper and the Choco paper. There's a whole lot more pigment on this paper that's going to work as you trace. And so basically, let's see. Let's say this is one of my drawings, and let's say that I saw this in a magazine or something, and now I want to do it. I want to make one similar at least. So with just regular clear vellum kind of tracing paper, this is less expensive than vellum. It's just a tracing paper. It's not like a Choco where it's going to leave a mark. I can go on here and very quickly get my basic drawing. Now again, this is one of those where you wouldn't have to do everything, because you can remember to do much of this. Okay, so but let's say I wanted to get this one big vine, and I wanted to do that. Then these things, I can probably just, I don't have to outline them. I can probably remember to do that. Okay, so there. I don't have to trace the little lines. And let's say I've got one and it's going to have a raised lip. So I might want to do that just to remind myself that it's got a raised lip, a raised edge. Okay? These little things I wouldn't mess with because I would know to do those. So there is my drawing. Hopefully you can see that. There's my drawing. And now what I'll do is I'm going to take this Choco paper and I'm going to put this down, and what I'm going to do is actually I'm going to just trace it right here on this instead of tracing it on paper, because it should Just make sure I'm not lying to you. It should copy on here too. Yep, you can see. You can see, but I bet you can't see that as well as you'd like to. So let me, let's see. This won't show on the dark ones that I've got, but let's see if it will show. This is a little, these were like the things I was sampling, trying to figure out how to do grass and different color combinations. But let's say I wanted to do one of these leaves on here. I wanted to do this leaf that has an edge. So make sure you can tell the texture. It's kind of a little bit draggy. It's not smooth like the back side of the paper. You can feel the chalkiness, okay? So let's put that on, and I'm just gonna, you can do it with this, a pencil. Okay, now I don't have to do that, but I could, okay? Oh, well, and I lied. It didn't show up at all, did it? It shows up a little bit. You can't see it. What can I find to do this on? Well, great for me to have an example and not be able to pull it up for you, huh? Let's see here. I've got stuff. Let me do this. I am going to use a piece of cardstock. Let's try that. This should work. Sorry, I didn't test that out first. Okay. You see this, I hope? So I'm going to trace this. I'm going to trace that. I'm going to go here, and this is going to go there. And there you have it. So there's my first little thing. I could go ahead and draw this. Now this one I don't have against the paper, so I would just finish out what I think it would look like. Okay. And I might want to do this. And go on over here and do this. And I'll go right off the edge of the paper there. Okay. So now I've got that all drawn out. Okay. So that's the beauty of the tracing paper. So I could have taken this little guy and I could trace him. And you can do it at the same time. You don't have to, you know, I was doing these separately, but I can do this like this. This won't show up as well because it's not going to cut through it as well because this is very thick paper. Hello. Let's just say I just wanted his hat. Okay. That didn't work, but now I can. It was just too thick on that cardstock. But if it was a magazine, for example, that would work just fine. Okay, so there's his little hat. So it really, this kind, I don't want to cover up my little thing. This kind of thing can really save you a lot of time if you're trying to lay out. And let's say that you had 3 pumpkins and you liked 2 of them, but you didn't really like the other. Well, I can then flip this over where let's say I did this guy and I liked him. Well, if I flip him over this way, I can trace him just like this. I've got another pumpkin, looks very similar to that pumpkin, going the other direction. So, you know, you can copy this on the back side and let it trace through there. I hope that makes sense. So there's lots of ways you can use this to cut down your production time so that you can get your picture done. And I'm going to do this even though I feel a little bit nervous about doing this, but I will go ahead and do this anyway and show you. There is, when I was pulling up these same things, for example, This looks a lot like a Danish lady that I used to follow, and but I don't know. I don't know who did this. Again, this is one that did not have a. It did not have a. It didn't have an explanation of who it was. So let's see. Again, let me. I don't want to put it on red, but I will just for the fun. The black paper would look so much better. Okay, now because this is paper, this should trace on there just fine underneath. And in this case, I can still use my pen. I prefer using a pencil or a pen, but I could use these little things and do it. They're a little bit thicker, but they still work. But you can't see, and you can't reuse this once you've done it, which I can if I do it with a pen or pencil, okay? But it will do it. Okay, so let's go here. And we can pull up, and you can see that it's doing a great job, okay? So, but this, see if I do it with this, then when I'm done, and if let's say I want to make 5 of these little cards, I can make 5 of them very quickly because I've got this tracing already done. Okay. One of the things I find that tracing helps with too is it gets your hand used to drawing. And so you can sort of start training your brain to see these things in groupings of objects rather than just one big design that's really scary. Okay, so this is doing, I want to be sure that that's straight because that's more of the style that I have here. Okay, and I would in this case put these little eyes because that's part of the charm of this particular design. Okay, so there you go. Now you're ready to start coloring that in or inking it in and working with it. And so, and now you've got this where you can do it again. And like I was saying, once you've done it this way, maybe I want the little guy to be on the other side. Well, now I can trace it here with my tracing paper. Okay, so what if you don't have tracing paper? What if you don't have any tracing paper? I mean, you don't have this Choco paper, but you see something and you think, I just can't draw that just yet, but I want to get that particular circle or that particular funny little face. I just saw the funniest little face on something, and so I want that. Or I see clusters of 3 berries or something, you know. So if you color this in dark, this pencil lead will act as your graphite. Okay, so now I can lay that down and I can take this little guy and just make sure that I've got him on the graphite, and I think I do. When I trace him, it is not going to be as good as the Choco paper, but in a pinch, this works. Okay, so you take that, and you can see that it made my tracing. So that's a way to do it if you don't have any of this paper. Or say you're sitting at Starbucks and you see something and you've got your journal out and you see something and you really, like on a magazine or you're looking at it, you know, just whatever, and you see it and you think, oh, I want to do that. I want to trace that off real quick. Well, that's one way to do it. Trace it on any piece of paper after you have marked the back of it with your pencil really strongly. Then you can go over it and draw it, and it will copy it just fine. So now I can go ahead, and I don't even have to do his little antlers. I can just put them on, and I can do this and do that, and that, and I'll just not color where it breaks off there. Okay, so you can do that, and you're ready to do a little guy. And if this isn't quite what you wanted, just pencil it in the way you want it, and then you're ready to go. So I hope some of that helped. I feel like we got a few little things done. I hope that wasn't too rushed right there at the end on using this paper. If you would like to see some more of that, please let me know, and I'll be more than happy to spend some time showing other ways of using this kind of tool, how to use this process effectively, and get you started with your Christmas cards and your designs and the things that you want to do. I just want to do things that you'll enjoy and that will not feel intimidating, but will feel doable, and with supplies that you've got on hand, or at least something that's not overly expensive, so that you can get it done. And I just want to thank you again. Have a happy Thanksgiving. I'll try to be more regular here now that I've gotten all the things behind me that I needed to get done, and it's just clear sailing ahead, and I should be able to get some more videos out, and I've got all kinds of ideas and things that I want to show you. But thank you so much for being here today. I just appreciate you very much, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Bye.